Thursday, WBAL TV aired a one-hour primetime special called Maryland Peace of Mind, Meeting the Need. One of the segments was a barbershop discussion about Black and African American men and how difficult it can be to talk about their feelings and seek help. Here to talk about that and the response to this special is Andrea Brown, Executive Director of the Black Mental Health Alliance. Good morning. I'm so glad you're here.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So after that special aired, what was the response?
We had no idea of what we were going to get, but during the second segment, the first segment, like 40 people called in. I won't even talk about the numbers after that, but between a man weeping openly on the phone and the responses that we've been getting in our emails about the compassion and really about WBAL really making this a moment and almost a movement. So it's been unbelievable. Really, I mean, again, we had no idea people were going to respond the way they did.
And it's been a long time for us to get to this point where it's something that we openly talk about, particularly in the Black community.
Absolutely.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to be comfortable, Black men in particular, to be comfortable sharing their feelings?
It's about conditioning. You know, one of the things that the barber said so accurately is, as a boy, he fell. And the first thing his father or an uncle said, you better not cry. And so considering that as a boy, you are told not to cry and to suppress that. And so that's all you've known. And now the conversation is shifting about, let's have a conversation. It's okay to cry. It's okay to weep.
And it's so true, because when you're a girl, it's always like, you know, you're very nurtured in that way. It's okay,
Absolutely.
It's okay. And as a boy, it's like, toughen up, you'll be okay.
Toughen up, that's right.
And, you know, being tough is also being able to share your emotions, having that emotional intelligence. Do you think it's about also safe spaces to do that?
It is. I think it's about safe spaces, but I think what we saw on Thursday, what we heard from our stakeholders, barbershops are the front line, right? They are barbershops and salons. They are our stakeholders. And I think what they said, what they proved is not only is it a safe space to have that discussion, but it's a brave one.
And we know what the dangers of bottling up those emotions are. Not only is it how it pops out in unhealthy ways and places,
Absolutely.
but now we're talking about suicide.
Yeah. Yeah, and so some of what we've seen, especially during the pandemic, is we've seen an increase in suicide for Black men and boys like we've never seen it before. And so it's important to start having the conversation with our children about trauma, having a conversation with a therapist. It's okay, it's not a dirty word. And so some of what we've seen, and especially with the barbershop conversation, so Black men and boys get to see that, so that doesn't have to be your end.
And what we did was have a phone bank so
Yes.
that we made it easy for people to connect, because that first step can be kind of hard.
Tough.
What kind of calls were you getting during that phone bank?
So a couple of calls we had to refer to the suicide hotline. I mean, so we had to do as much as we could, some warm handoffs. Some of what we got was, you know, my son needs some help, but he won't call. Or we had, one of my first calls I took was a man openly weeping about the special and about how he's in his 60s and just that day felt like he was able to start to have a conversation about how he felt and about not just about suicide, but about trauma in the Black and brown community.
This is the kind of programming that doesn't happen very often. So, you know, what are some things that you can tell us, the everyday people, we can do to help others open up?
So I think a couple of things. Again, remind people it is not a dirty word. It's okay to be able to see a therapist. Find a therapist that you can trust and talk to, and know that that's part of a journey. And some of what we do at the Black Mental Health Alliance is we subscribe to circles. And when I say circles, what does that mean? That really is an opportunity to have a support group where you get to be heard. And again, check in often on your community. Often check in on your uncle, check in on your brother. And again, as we saw in the barbershop, continue to have open dialogue, and then make sure that there are resources available to people.
Definitely have to follow up on that.
Yes.
Open the can of worms, but then get in there too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll be honest, some of the emails that we've gotten lately, people, well, even as of yesterday, people are asking for a second segment.
Good, good. That's so
yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
this is, You know, there's been a lot of talk in the last few years about mental health, how important it is that we deal with that.
That's right.
What are the dangers of not dealing with that? Do you think we're making any progress in changing the stigma around mental health?
I think we're reducing it, and I think as we talk to our children and our nieces and our nephews, as we talk to them young about you are not your trauma, and it's okay to feel sad, but how do we deal with that? So I think we're making some progress, but I think we've got to heighten awareness, especially in Black communities, especially in those communities where there's a stigma attached. So yes, we are making progress, but there's so much work to be done. But what Thursday did really was change the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you were here to talk to us. This is such an important conversation.
It really is.
And
Thank you.
I'm glad that we can help facilitate this conversation and get the ball rolling.
So are we. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Right.
If you missed it and would like to see the special Maryland Peace of Mind Meeting the Need, you can find it on WBALTV.com. Click on Maryland Peace of Mind. We also have other mental health resources listed there. Stay with WBAL. We've got much more to come.